Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. Because I got some information for you tonight that is going to blow your mind. When we talk about truth, we want to get down to the exact truth. In the beginning was Word, and the Word was God, and the Word. In the beginning was Word, and the Word was with truth, and the Word was truth. So let's untangle all this mess. You know, was Word, and the Word was with magic, and the Word was magic. It ain't magic. It's just a matter of intelligence. So let's untangle it all. And basically, we all get caught up in all this commerce. And if you look at the post, you'll see the text of the post. And you 9 of the United States Code is the transportation code. Now that transportation code has a set of definitions in it. 1. And it says under number 2, why are we talking about commerce in the transportation code? Because trade, traffic, and it doesn't say or, it says and. And when we think about concise English, that means that commerce means trade, traffic, and transportation. They're all synonymous. They all mean the same thing. When we see anything that says transportation, we can replace it with traffic, trade, and commerce. So when we see the Title 49 of the United States Code, which says it's the Transportation Code, it means it's the Commerce Code. Wait a minute. Isn't Title 15 the Commerce Code? You mean to tell me we got 2 titles of the United States Code that says Commerce Code? Or is that Commerce Code the Transportation Code? Wait a minute. Is it the traffic code? Is it the trade code? So let's get serious, people. Let's break this stuff down. Okay. Title 26 of the United States Code is the tax code. And we know all events in commerce are taxable. Okay? So let's look at this tax code and let's show you what we find in the tax code. Title 26 of the United States Code, Section 7701. We're just going to take the laptop outside. We lost a little signal out there. I'm going to hang out here and do this. All right? I've tried to watch it, and it went out. Booted me off. We're back. We're going to get going on this again. We see that in Title 26 of the United States Code, Section 7701, definitions. And under A, it says, when used in this title, were not otherwise distinctly expressed or manifestly incompatible with the intent thereof. Okay, again, traffic citations are dependent upon the driver license, motor vehicle operators, and that all has to do with commerce. So it does have to do, it is compatible with the intent of tax. So let's see what it says. First, under A26, we see trade or business. Because remember, commerce means trade, traffic, and transportation. And this specifically says trade or business. Again, meaning they're both basically the same. Okay? The term trade or business, in other words, what they're doing is they're putting them together. So they're used together. The term trade or business includes, and when we use it includes, it excludes all others. The term trade or business includes the performance of the functions of public office. It doesn't mean the public office. It means the performance of the functions of public office. And so when we see that nice policy officer on the side of the road, when we see him on the side of the road, he's only performing the functions of a public office. He does not exist in a public office. He is a private entity. He is working for a private entity. Then, when we see another part of trade or business, and this is the source is 26 U.S.C. 469 C6. So it's a different section. Instead of being under the definitions, it's in a functional capacity of the section. And it says activity in connection with trade or business or production income, to the extent provided in regulations for purposes of paragraph 1A. The term trade or business includes, and this is the redundancy and the ambiguity, because they're using trade or business to define trade or business. The term trade or business includes any activity in connection with trade or business, or B, any activity with respect to which expenses are allowable as deduction under Section 212. So again, everything has to do with commerce, even traffic, transportation. So now, let's see if we can get this to scroll up. In my rush, I left my little mouse downstairs. So let me, hold on and let me be right back. I gotta go grab my mouse. Okay, put my jacket on since it's a little chilly. Okay. Now, when we go to the definitions section back at 7701 of the tax code, Title 26, Section 7701, subsection H. It's going to be the lowercase h. And it says, motor vehicle operating lease. And it says 1, in general, for purposes of this title, in the case of a qualified motor vehicle operating agreement, which contains a terminal rental adjustment clause. That's your registration every year. They require you to re-register it every year. That's your rental agreement. Such agreement shall be treated as a lease if, but for such terminal rental adjustment clause, such agreement would be treated as a lease under this title, and the lessee shall not be treated as the owner of the property subject to an agreement during any period such agreement is in effect. Who's the lessee? You are. You are. And we'll show you that here in a minute. Qualified motor vehicle operating agreement defined. For purposes of this subsection, what's the purpose of this subsection? Taxation on commerce. This is proof that when you have a driver's license, which is known as the motor vehicle operating lease, and we'll explain the lease here in a minute too. In general, motor vehicle means any agreement with respect to a motor vehicle, including a trailer, which meets the requirements of subparagraph B, C, and D of this paragraph. So we start out with B, minimum liability of lessor. Who's the lessor? The state. And they're saying they have minimal liability. So they are admitting they have liability. An agreement meets the requirements of this subparagraph if, under such an agreement, the sum of the amount the lessor is personally liable for, or personally liable to repay, and the net fair market value of the lessor's interest in any property pledged as security for property subject to the agreement. And see, what happens is when you register your automobile with the county register, on your side of the counter, you're in your private capacity. On her side of the county, or on her side of the counter, the county treasurer is in a public capacity, and her assignment as a function of public office is to acquisition automobiles for use as motor vehicles. Now, mind you, the state has not paid anything for this yet, so they really don't have any interest at all. It's all presumed that you will assume by the implication that you're told you're required to, that they have that interest. The net fair market value of the lessor's interest in any property pledged as security for property subject to the agreement equals or exceeds, yet they have none, amounts borrowed to finance the acquisition of property subject to the agreement. There shall not be taken into account under clause II, this clause, any property pledged which is property subject to the agreement or property directly or indirectly financed by indebtedness secured by property subject to the agreement. Isn't the United States and their subcorporations insolvent, in debt, indebtedness? C, certification by lessee. Remember, we're the lessee. Notice of tax ownership. We're agreeing we aren't actual owners of the property, but we own the tax liability. Does that make sense, people? An agreement meets the requirements of this subparagraph if such agreement contains a separate written statement separately signed by the lessee, under which the lessee certifies under penalty of perjury that it intends, and notice it says it. We're going to talk about this at the end. It says it intends that more than 50% of the use of the property subject to such agreement is to be used in a trade or business of the lessee. Trade or business. Isn't that a function of public office? I don't perform functions of public office. I haven't taken an oath to perform functions of public office. I can't do that. Sorry. I don't even have a job. Think about this. Really think about this. Under section or subpart I of subpart C, it says, under which the lessee certifies under penalty of perjury that it intends. It's not my intent to perform commerce at all, let alone 50% of the use. Does the state have record that I used that property 50% of its use? Does it have time logs of the full use showing that at least 50% of its use was for commerce, trade, traffic, or transportation in the functions of a public office? Any compensation receipt saying they paid me for that? No. Do they have any mileage logs showing that at least half of the miles were used for the functions of public office? No. Do they have a bill of lading? No. Do they have a daily vehicle usage report? No. Gosh, there's no such record. That's called no teal record. No such record. Now, that statement under penalty and that the lessee has been advised that it will not be treated as the owner of the property subject to the agreement for federal income tax purposes. Right there, you can conjoin traffic citations with federal income tax purposes, and therefore it is a federal question. Federal removal. Diversity of jurisdiction. Period. Sorry. Don't know what to tell you. Suck off, state. Subpart D. Lessor must have no knowledge that certification is false. Who's the lessor? The state. They must have no knowledge that the certification is false. They have no knowledge. They have no record. Tell them, look up your records. You have no receipts, no bill of lading, no time logs, no travel mileage. You don't even have a statement under penalty of perjury stating that I intend to do so. Oh, sorry. Certification is false. No motor vehicle operating lease required. Period. An agreement meets the requirements of this subparagraph if the lessor does not know that the certification described in subparagraph CI is false. So all you have to do is let them know the certification is false and point this out. Period. It's that simple. Now, if you look at the bottom of the text of this post, we all know we have to present identification to the nice policy officer, right? Can I see your driver's license, registration, insurance? Sorry, I don't have ID. What do you mean? I'm not an id entity. I'm not an identity. I'm not an id entity. Identity. Remember I tell you about breaking down the words, the terms? That's two things put together, id and entity. We all know what an entity is, right? Do you really? Let me help you out. ID, id, etymology. The origin of id is from the late 1920s, from Latin, literally, that. Remember we talked about it? It, under which the lessee certifies, under penalty of perjury, that it intends that more than 50% of the use of the property subject to such agreement is to be in a trade or business of the lessee. I'm not an it. And I'm not a who either. I'm a what. What do you mean a what? Well, an it is a noun. A noun describes it, that thing. A person, place, or thing. I'm a what? I'm a verb. Always in motion. Even when I'm laying down with my eyes closed. I am a what? A verb. 1920s from Latin, literally that. Translating German, S. The term was first used in this sense by Freud, following use in a similar sense by his contemporary George Grodek. Entity, the second part of identity. Etymology, the origin is late 15th century, denoting a thing's existence. From French, entite, or medieval Latin, entitas. From late Latin, ens, ens. Ent, being, from esse, be. Ens. Let's look at that one. Because see, most of our court languages use Latin. And that is from late Latin, ens, E-N-S. Ens legus, the legal name. Ens legus. E-N-S space L-E-G-I-S. Ens legus. Do you see that? Do you see how they did that? They disseminated all that information. They separated it up and they combined it and put it back together and got you all confused. Got you babbling with the English. So let's look at legus. Ens legus. Etymology of legus. Legislation. Legislation. What is legislation? It's the literal word. It's the one that's written down. It's when they go to get together and put all their minds together and think that they're going to rule us by words written on paper. And so they write it down in nice statute, codes, rules, regulations, acts, edicts, proclamations, ordinations, this and that, and they can shove it up there, you know what. Because it ain't me. Origin, mid-17th century. Denoting the enactment of laws. From late Latin, legus, lation, literally, proposing of law. From lex, law, and latus, raised. Past participle of tolerate. So what they're doing is they're trying to raise the dead. They're trying to raise the legis entity. From lex, law, and latus, raised. All rise, please. I'll sit here, thanks. Or else I'll come in and I'll not sit down. And I like wearing my hat. It's part of my armorial bearing. It's part of what I use as part of my character. You don't need to tell me to change my character. So when they come in and they see me sitting there, and instead of waiting till they get up to the bench, you may all be seated, they say you may all be seated, and then go up to their bench, and then they look at me and say, "Sir, would you take your hat off, please?" "No, thanks, I don't wish to." So now you know that all identifications refer to legislated entities, creatures of literal words and subject to them, and not the spoken word, of which we, as people, are called. Come out of her, people. Come out of her. My people shall perish for lack of knowledge. So study to shew thyself, so that you may live because he lives. And remember, people, I now have a proxy PayPal account. If you appreciate this information and want to forward gratuities, I'll be posting the link in the comments. I would most certainly appreciate anything you can help with. In the meantime, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless. Love you. Have a great night. Bye.